So good afternoon to all present over here. Myself, Dr. Raghavendra Patidar, Convener, Institutions Innovation Council, Global Institute of Technology, again welcomes you all audience present here. In the continuation of first session Impact Lecture Series, sponsored by Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, our today's second Impact Lecture is on Entrepreneurship for All, Idea Generation, Evaluation and Implementation by Squadron Leader Susmita Khare. The sole objective of this impact lecture is to develop necessary knowledge and skills required for organizing and carrying out entrepreneurial activities. Entrepreneurship is important for a number of reasons, from promoting social change to driving innovation. Great entrepreneurs have the ability to change the way we live and work on local and national basis. So, by not taking so much time, let's start the second impact lecture by introducing our next speaker, Squadron Leader Suhasita Khare. Ms. Suhasita Khare is a military veteran, entrepreneur, and an academician. She hung up her uniform in the year 2017 after serving Indian Air Force as an aeronautical engineer for 10 years. She then completed General Management Program from IIM Lucknow and Entrepreneurship for Everyone program from IIM Bangalore. She had also been a part of the mentorship program of the Empowering Women through Entrepreneurship Initiative of the National Commission for Women, the IIM Bangalore, and the Indian SME Forum. So I am pleased to welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this welcome. And I'm very happy to be part of these lecture series. So in this, today I welcome you all for this session, which is Entrepreneurship for All, Idea Generation, Evaluation and Implementation. Mark my words, I'm stressing on these three words, generation, evaluation and implementation, because these form the crux of this webinar that I will be covering in the next 1 hour or so. So in this learning journey, you will basically learn the entrepreneurial methods through kind of hands-on activities through this limited channel, whatever I can give, on how to identify, evaluate, and develop your venture ideas using the latest research on overcoming uncertainty and get to a point where you can decide on how to start your venture. So without any further ado, let me just go ahead. But before that, though Dr. Patidar has introduced me earlier, but let me tell a few facts about myself. I am Squadron Leader Suhasita Khare, and I served Indian Air Force as an aeronautical engineer for 10 years, where I was working in different systems like radar and communication systems. Thereafter, I did my general management program from IIM Lucknow, and further I cleared my UGC NET. And I have been part of this entrepreneurship programs and initiative, which was launched by NCW, IIM Bangalore and India SME Forum. Also, I'm a striving artist, and I have myself started a small venture of myself. So I'm an entrepreneur and obviously an academician, because I'm dealing with you guys today. So now, let us now begin with this journey. So to begin with, first I'll cover what is this do your venture philosophy. Okay, it will introduce you all to some common paths that entrepreneurs have taken towards launching their ventures. So I'll also address some of the common misconceptions of being an entrepreneur. Next, we'll focus on the theme of idea generation, which serves as an introduction to some quick tools and techniques that can be leveraged by anyone to generate a portfolio of ideas to choose from. Now, we will evaluate the ideas that you have generated. Okay, this evaluation will be done by, it can be done by going out and talking to few potential customers. So a lot of times when we are inside our rooms and we are talking to few of our friends, we imagine that everyone has these problems that we experience. Entrepreneurship actually is all about solving the problems, right? So what I would want you all to do after this lecture is done, I'll provide you with few toolkits and few things that will help you out to generate some ideas, and then I would ask you to step out and field test your ideas by seeking feedbacks from potential customers. So by talking to potential customers, you would be able to sense whether the problem that you're imagining is exactly the problem that they have in mind, or whether they would like to pay to solve this problem. That's actually the crux, right? So then further, we will invest our time in exposing you to some simple documentation tools, as I covered earlier, which will be not as elaborate as a business plan per se, but these tools will help you keep track of your venture idea as you talk to your potential customer and as your idea evolves. Further, at the last, I will introduce you to the philosophy of effectuation and various principles that drive effectual entrepreneurship. These principles in many ways are simple thumb rules that expert entrepreneurs follow to take decisions in uncertainty, and definitely something that we can learn from. So this is the whole crux and how our presentation will be moving along. Okay, so let's start. So here's this quote which says, "Do or do not, there is no try." I don't know how many of you believe in this, but yes, if you are looking forward to being an entrepreneur, this is one thing that you have to do it. Okay, so in all the researches that have been carried out with past and interactions with people, it has been found that there is always an entrepreneurial intent, but there is always a huge gap between the intent and action. You know, like many of us, I know many of us who will always be having this intent of, say, regular exercising or studying regularly so you don't hustle up in the time when exams are near. So all of us have that intention, but very few actually do exercise and are able to sustain it, or very few actually do study regularly and are able to sustain it. Okay, so while intent, thinking, planning, and analysis has its place, but what I believe, there is no substitute for actually doing it. So it's all about getting ahead, go ahead and do it. Okay, so if you're planning to run a marathon, well, just start running, right? Cover whatever distance you can and gradually increase your weekly mileage a little bit every week, and within few weeks you will find yourself on the way to running a marathon. So the same philosophy applies to do your venture. Okay, just start by going out onto the road, literally onto the road, and speak to few potential customers. Test your hypothesis, seek feedback, act on that feedback, and go back again with a refurbished idea of a product or a service, and pretty soon you'll find yourself on the way of achieving your dream of doing your venture. So my objective to this webinar is to help you with little baby steps, which in my experience are the most difficult, let me tell you. So like laws of physics, it's breaking the inertia, which is not easy. But once you start actually doing stuff, the momentum slowly picks up, and the momentum of action helps in sustaining the forward movement. Okay. So coming to the myths, there are a lot of myths related to entrepreneurship. So in this, I would be using both research experiences and few expert views to address the three most influential myths related to entrepreneurship. First is financial capital versus human or social capital. A survey was conducted during IIM Bangalore's annual entrepreneurship event, which is Eximius, if you guys are aware. And the people who attended were asked, what is the biggest stumbling block to start a venture? The response overwhelmingly was lack of finance. So while it is true that a lot of startups fail to achieve their potential because funds dry up, current research on entrepreneurship shows that the main cause driving startup failures is not primarily due to lack of funding. As per Now Wasserman's research, his research was published in a book called The Founder's Dilemma. Almost 65% of startups fail because of various people issues. These include, inability to hire the right talent, inability to take all the stakeholders along, the employees, the investors, suppliers, partners, customers, so many issues. Okay. And you must be hearing there's a lot of buzz in the media these days about the role of venture capital funding, which is called VC funding, angel investors. There's a lot of buzz, okay? But recent Kaufman Foundation carried out a research and it highlighted that only 5%, mind you, 5% of entrepreneurial funding is through venture capital, okay? Thus, more often than not, it is not the lack of financial capital, but it is the inability to identify, influence, and build the right human or social assets that hinder the growth of any startup. So I hope you guys have taken a mental note of it. The second myth is solo entrepreneur versus co-founding team. So there's a lot of doubt whether I should go ahead being a solo entrepreneur and or should I have a good talented team along with me. So notwithstanding this popular heroic portrayals of individual founders like Steve Jobs and all that, the process of entrepreneurship is essentially a collective and a social process. Okay, in fact, the data from US, one of the most individualistic culture as per Hofstede's cultural parameters and studies, showed that only 16% of ventures are solo founded, while a vast majority of startups, that's 84%, are co-founded. And in a research on Bangalore's entrepreneurial ecosystem, it was like there's so many startups who start from Bangalore. So there was a research which was carried out, and it was found that it is most important for founders to identify both their strengths and limitations. Okay, after all, no matter how talented each one of us is, each individual is constrained by their resources. And once you know what are your limitations, you would like to have a co-founder who doesn't have that limitation to make up a team. So in this VUCA environment, what we call the startup environment today as VUCA, VUCA. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Okay, that it defines most of the startup environments. Founders are thus advised to identify and form a diverse team of 3 to 5 members who bring complementing human and social capital to the table. That's how it works. The third myth, friends and family, who you want to choose your co-founders to be, friends or family, or professional, working professional and professional partners. So it is commonly believed that it would be easier to navigate the volatile world of startups if we have friends or families as co-founders. Okay, so friends and families do constitute a very important source of funding. You can ask money from them. But it is important to appreciate that when it comes to identifying people to build a nascent product or service, market or firm, it is important to identify people who have complementing skill sets. Your brother or sister must be a great pal, but he might not have that skill set to, step together with you and build up a venture. And, people who can conduct them professionally, that's very important. And that's where the family and friends, when you start a venture with them, it lacks. Okay, so and research also supports this view. Now Wasserman again finds that while 50% of ventures are founded with friends and families, teams comprising of friends and families are the least stable of the various types of teams and thus the least likely to succeed. So now you know who to choose and whether you want to be a solo entrepreneur or a team, obviously a team, and what is more important, finance or the people whom you're working with. So I hope I have cleared these myths related to entrepreneurship. Okay, coming next is what is called the principle of equifinality. What is this concept? Okay, this concept suggests that similar results may be achieved with different initial conditions in many ways. So there has been a lot of research and there have been interaction with entrepreneurs, and it has been found that similar openness and diversity of paths and the means to the end are the goal. They can fulfill the goal of becoming an entrepreneur. So there are many paths to entrepreneurship, but all these entrepreneurs, they find a few recurring paths. Okay, there's obviously you can become an entrepreneur taking lots of ways, but there are few paths which entrepreneurs take to do what they want to do. Okay, so I'm sure definitely you would like to know what these kind of paths are, so that you can identify whether you are taking one of those paths towards your venture. Okay, so covering this, I would like to tell you the different types of entrepreneurs which are there, and that will actually make clear the kind of paths they have taken and why they are called those types of entrepreneurs. So the first is the user entrepreneur. Okay, so imagine yourself as a user of a particular product or service. Let us take, say, adventure sports. Okay, say you are an avid mountain biker. However, you realize that the product and services available for mountain bikes in your region are just not up to the standard or the quality that you would like. So in some cases, these products and accessories may just not be available, okay, or they are not of particular standard, the safety standards are not being met. So we found that many professionals who are passionate about something, right, if they find themselves frustrated with what is on the offer, they decide to take things into their own hands. Okay, so these type of people are called user entrepreneurs. So if you are using something and you are passionate about something which you like to do, and you find there are not enough offerings on the table for that particular activity or for that particular problem, you can take the matters in your hand and say, okay, I would like to solve this problem now. So I would launch this kind of venture for myself. Okay, so these type of people are user entrepreneur, and this is one of the paths that you can also take for something that you are passionate about. Okay, next is take a break entrepreneur. Okay, this is someone who wants to become an entrepreneur but doesn't have a clue as to what sort of venture he wants to start. I guess it's the case with most of us, right? So you want to become an entrepreneur, you want to have something of your own, but then you don't know, don't have a clue at all that what kind of venture you want. So this person decides to take a break and be away from day-to-day hassles that one finds being part of a regular job, and spend some time just reflecting on what is the big problem that they would like to solve. Okay, so these are the kind of take a break entrepreneurs. Next, we have moonlighting entrepreneurs. What is moonlighting? It's somewhere where you are working on some main job, like you're a student, so you have this lot of studies going on, and when you come back from classes in the evening, you have something, a side hustle. Maybe it's your hobby driven thing that you have an Instagram page, you're selling something on Instagram, or it's just a blog that you're writing and making money out of it, or you're making some YouTube videos and making money out of it, right, as a student. And so this is someone who has clarity as to what he or she would like to do. Okay, but before committing to an idea completely, the person chooses to work on it part-time. Like you guys, like a few of you, I'm sure, must be very popular YouTubers. So thus they would continue to work full-time on their regular jobs and other activities while tinkering over the idea, seeking feedback on the same, and fine-tuning it during their spare time. Underlying word is spare time. Okay, so usually in the evenings or over the weekends. So further, the full-time job serves as a source of either skill or networks and the savings, obviously, and if it will serve them well when he or she finally starts a venture, right? So you're getting a skill set now while you are going through your course, and further, if you get a job, you will get you will have time to build up your network and time to build up your savings, which will then help you to launch your own venture. Okay, so I'm also a moonlighting entrepreneur. Okay, so I do this thing that I'm doing right now, and also I have a hobby which I have taken up, and I am right now in the stage of customer validation, where I got an Instagram page, and I'm getting feedbacks from them. I'm making a product which I do it on my own. So I would also say that I'm also a moonlighting entrepreneur, like many of you must be in the audience. Okay, uh, so next is an accidental entrepreneur. Who are they? So quick, these entrepreneurs are people who perhaps never thought of being an entrepreneur. Okay, they started with some action, and then A led to B, B led to C, and it led to D, and before they realize they have a functional venture. Okay, sometimes just a series of small inconsequential conversations just start leading you onto something. So it's like, if we talk about how much money we are willing to spend if we were to do an experiment like this, and then it starts getting a little more serious, and then there is an idea, there is a conversation on money, then there is a conversation of what does it means to step out of a particular kind of life that you are leading right now. So these small conversations and the small actions, they kind of eventually come together and you have your venture, and you never realize that you never planned for it, but it happened. Okay, so this is one kind of accidental entrepreneurs. Next is, we all know this guy, right? Steve Jobs, the famous Apple iPhone thing. So he was a make a dent entrepreneur, and his famous quote says, "We are here to put a dent in the universe. Otherwise, why else even be here?" So true. So the concept of making a dent comes from obviously Steve Jobs, where he expected that ventures to put a dent on the universe, that the life before and life after is not same. Thanks to this venture that the entrepreneur starts. Life before Apple and life after Apple is not same for many of us. Okay, so this is kind of make a dent entrepreneur. One such venture that I'll introduce you to is an Indian venture called Amagi. I don't know how many of you must have heard the name. Amagi was founded by 3 entrepreneurs. Actually, they were incubated in the NSR cell of IIM Bangalore itself. And now they have come to become a very large company into a conceptualized advertisements on television, and they offer many more things. So it was founded by 3 entrepreneurs. And initially, they started to sell its standalone transmission signal splitting technology to television broadcasting channels. They started from there. So from what was supposed to be a technology company, they changed into a full-fledged media handling, marketing, airtime for advertisers and some of the biggest broadcasting channels in India. Okay, so outside of India also, Amagi has positioned itself as a broadcast layout management business, helping channels provide customized content to multiple countries using one flow. Okay, so these innovations in the offerings have helped Amagi to become the success that it is now. So these are the kind of make a dent entrepreneur, something totally out of the box and totally different. Okay, so each of these other parts that we have discussed till now, whether moonlighting, accidental, make a dent, these parts have its own upside and downside. The key to remember is that each of these parts have worked up for that particular individual and their individual context. Similarly, each one of us will need to evaluate and identify our own individual context, what you want from life. Okay, what is you that is you want to do. Okay, so we need to identify our own individual context before deciding to choose either one of these commonly occurring paths or a completely different path altogether. Okay, so you will have to think up of an idea, go out, talk to people, come back, analyze it, and you take this input, go out again, and very soon you'll realize you're quite deep into your venture and very close to starting it. I can hear some disturbance. Can you all please mute? Thank you so much. Okay, so so come, let's do your venture. Let's start. Let's understand how it works. Okay, first to do your venture, you would need to have an idea, right? Ideas can be random, it can be wacky, they can be non-marketable, they can be a solution to a problem which is not even existing now, maybe in distant future. So now we're going to spend a lot of time looking for ideas for your venture. Okay, it will be a lot of fun. I promise you guys. So we are going to introduce you to multiple techniques that you could leverage to come up with a large list of ideas, but you have to spend time and you have to take this exercise very seriously. Even you already have a venture or you would like to something take forward. So here's what I suggest. Actually, there are two kind of people in this thing. One set of people who have no idea as to what they would like to do. So it will be very much fun for those people. But there will be another set of participants who are into this webinar with a definitive idea of what is they would like to do or start with, or some rough idea. Okay. So for the second set of people, I would urge you all to actually take this exercise or too seriously, because you never know, in the process you may come up with an idea better than what you have, or you may come up with a flavor of an idea that may be interesting to you. Okay, so I'll be taking you to different kind of toolkits that you can use for generation of idea. First, the slide shows 4 of these. Let me discuss one by one. First is brainstorming. From the word itself, you must have realized what it is, and you may have engaged in it at some point in your life. So this is the simplest of all idea generation tools. Spend as much as you want and note down as many ideas as you can. To start with, I would like you all to take a piece of paper and pen, and in your free time, write down at least 50 ideas. At least 50, minimum 50 ideas that comes to your mind, the kind of problems that you see around you, or the kind of solutions that you would like to offer, or services or products that you would like to offer, that you imagine yourself engaging in that kind of activities. Just write, imagine and write some 50 ideas in your spare time. Okay, and I'll further tell you what to do with those 50 things. Okay, so write down as many ideas as you can. Okay, for now we will suspend the evaluation of those ideas. Don't try to evaluate at the same time when you're writing those ideas. Just write it down, whatever comes to your mind. Don't evaluate it then and there. So why I'm saying this is because if you said in 19th century that it was possible to take heavier than air objects and make them fly, no one would have believed you. But Wright brothers did it, right? So their entrepreneurial venture and their mindset eventually made it happen. So go ahead, and by the end of the task, you would have tens of business ideas that you could choose from. Another technique that we can use is, it's called painstorming. It's the latest buzzword. It's the painstorming is the new brainstorming. Okay, nothing works when you were just sitting in a room and just backing your brain up and putting up some ideas. You have to take some pain in it. Okay, you have to work hard for it. So it is called painstorming. Here is what you can do. Okay, over the next few days, keep talking to people in terms of what potential problems that they have which you can solve. So all of you have to keep in mind is that keep talking to people, keep observing people. This could be youngsters, this could be elderly, this could be anybody, your colleague, your friends, or yourself even. Observe and see if there are any problems that they're facing. After your brainstorming, engage in this brainstorming exercise. Set aside about half an hour to 45 minutes every day and observe the life around. I know all of us are very good at it, sitting and doing nothing. So just 45 minutes every day is what I ask for, just to observe life around. So at the end of it, you will come up with a list of problems that you think are interesting for you to be solved. That's very important. They should be interesting to you. Okay, so I'll just give you an example of this young girl who was studying at Stanford, and she happened to have a grandmother who was having Alzheimer's. So they had this care facility where her grandmother was put in. So this young girl used to go and sit with her grandmom every day. And as she was degenerating, she started to notice a lot of patterns, and she would actually notice people like her grandmother who were around in that care facility with dementia and because of Alzheimer's. So they were not able to take care of themselves. And one of the biggest problem that they were having was while eating. They would grow up all over. They wouldn't eat too much. So they were very much frustrated. They were not able to put enough food in their mouth. and caretakers were also very unhappy because they were there was a lot of cleaning to be done because there were a lot of food around the table. So what she thought that as a designer to come up with a table set that would help the elderly, and then she used all of it she observed in order to create a very nice table set which the patient could use themselves, and in the process not really dirty the place around and not get frustrated because they were able to get food in their mouth using that table. So this is a classic brainstorming exercise. In your earlier lecture in the morning, Mr. Wabho also displayed, while she was discussing about patents and all, he showed you guys a table, which he along with his team members has designed a workstation or a cubicle, which has, water going inside and coming, a chilled water, so as to reduce the, make it more energy efficient and use less AC and everything. So I'm sure he must have engaged in a lot of brainstorming he must have observed a lot to get to this final conclusion. So this is the kind of brainstorming that you need to engage in yourself. So so there's a lot of, the other thing that can happen is you think that you're really good at something, but you don't really. So you haven't ever tested it out or never worked at it. So to balance all of that out, you need to take a very practical approach. So when you generate idea, it's very important to think who you really are, what are your skill sets, I quote, skill sets, and also who is in your ecosystem. When I say who is in your ecosystem, it's extremely important to dip into your network, because entrepreneurship is pretty much about that. How much can you spread? How much can you dig in to the people you already know? Therefore, I would strongly recommend, when you are thinking of random ideas, check on these 3 boxes: who you are, what you know, who you know. Extremely important. Okay, let's come to another exercise. That is go wacky. Go wacky, absolutely nuts, go wacky. So, okay, this is a fun thing. There's a lot of stupid ideas that have made their owners really wealthy. So here is what you can do. Go to internet and Google on the stupid ideas that made people wealthy. And you could see that it's just not smart people who make a lot of money. People who had fun and frolic also made a lot of money. So go ahead and be as wacky as you want to be. To give you an example of wacky ideas that made entrepreneurs very wealthy, is the thing like this boyfriend pillow. Somebody must have invented this boyfriend pillow and must have made a lot of money. All those lonely people can hug that pillow and sleep. So these are the kind of ideas that people are getting, and they are making money out of it, right? So there are a lot of money to be made in a lot of multiple ways. There are customers who will buy everything. So let your creative juices flow and come up with some good wacky ideas. So these are the steps that you can follow to have that list of ideas that I talked about. 50 ideas, remember. So next is the hobby-driven ideas. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have started their venture by taking their passion and converting it into the venture. You could do the same if you have a passion or hobby or a problem that you are unable to solve. So if current services are not good enough, you can take this opportunity to come up with a business idea that you could leverage on your hobby. So let me give you an example. There was an IIM Bangalore graduate who is running her own venture, and she runs a consulting agency. But when she decided she would work only from Monday to Thursday. On Friday, she started a new venture, which was her hobby. So what she did was, she really liked baking. So she started this venture where she said, sign up for a mystery box on every Friday. So what this mystery box was, the subscriber would get a box every Friday evening. And so they open up, and there were things which this girl had baked for this week. It could be a cupcake, sometimes it could be a muffin or waffles or anything. So this lady, she just felt like baking on Friday, and she would do it. And the subscribers would get a surprise box. So you can work through the week, and many of them when they used to come back at Friday, and they used to get that box, and it was a little treat for them. So do something what you want to have it as a passion or a hobby, and you can turn it into a venture. The small image that you see below the hobby driven is a a screenshot of my page from Instagram, which is called Crafty Curls. And this is what I like to do. I crochet toys for toddlers and infants. These are all handmade toys which are made from organic cotton yarn and with zero plastic. And this is something is my hobby, and which I have turned into a small little venture of my own. So this is something what you can do. Okay, this is one example. Next, before we launch ourselves into evaluating these ideas, okay, now you have, I assume that you have a list of 50 ideas ready, but let me just introduce you to various other things. The antecedents and sources of opportunities. Okay, I would like to take an example, and this is now some serious stuff. Okay, take an example. I'll give you an example just to indicate the state of affairs we are currently going through. If we look at the average lifespan of Fortune 500 companies, it has been steadily decreasing over the years. Now you don't hear about the Tatas and the Reliance group of companies, all these big companies. Earlier they had the average lifespan was life expectancy was 75 years. But now in this current environment, you hardly see these rare companies. Must have heard your parents talking about all these big companies. But now there are obviously these are there, but then now you don't hear that kind of life expectancy of those big companies. So earlier it was about 75 years, now it's about 15 years. Therefore, what you see, that only 61 of the companies that were in Fortune 500 in 1955 existed in 2004. That's about just 12% of the companies that managed to stay there. The rest of the companies that have been taken over, or they were not doing so well. So what it means is that established ventures are going to be threatened by newcomers. This is what Schumpeter called as creative destruction. So what does it mean for people like you and me who wants to start their venture? It means that the environment to start and run your venture is better now than at any other point of time. Your ability to threaten a very large company is higher now than at any point of time ever. So let's take the Indian scenario. Okay, India has been relatively stable thanks to what we called as a license Raj, like very archaic policies of industry. But again, the Indian environment is changing rapidly. For instance, companies like Flipkart have managed to create a new market for e-commerce. So I remember that Flipkart was one of the very few companies who actually created this e-commerce thing. And we used to started with books, and then it went to all sort of things. So riding on Flipkart's success, we have so many other e-commerce companies that have come. Most importantly, we now understand the logistics of supply and delivery across the country. Amazon, perfect example, right? So therefore, more and more new companies are able to ride on Flipkart's logistics, and they have started running their new venture. You have Carrot Lane, which is selling diamonds online. Would you have imagined buying, or your parents would have imagined buying diamonds online? Never ever. They would definitely go to the store to take the diamond against the light, check it, everything, and then they would buy. Similarly for the gold, but now you can buy it online. We are buying it online, and we are buying because people are selling it online. Okay, so then we have another company, as I told you, like Amagi that I introduced you earlier. Then there is Zoho in Chennai, and Just Books, which is a book rental. It's a kind of online library where you can rent your own books, and where we can make your own package, like you want to read 3 books in a month or 5 books in a month. So there's this called Just Books, and this Cloud9. So all these companies are challenging the existing models, not very far away from where we are currently living. Okay, so don't think that we are in India and will not be able to do it. You can do it anything. You can do anything that you want to do. So what are the sources of opportunity? I just would like to take you through to understand the antecedents of what would now be an opportunity. So why do we even have these opportunities? Why is that some of the large companies that existed in the past don't exist now, and they are no longer in position of superiority that they were earlier in? So the first change that brings about this is technology. Technology is constantly changing. So the companies in the past would have had earlier technology compared to the newcomers that are coming now. So technology is making certain things possible that earlier were not possible at all, right? So for instance, like a lot of people in India, perhaps in other emerging economies as well, uh, experienced internet for the first time, but for the most of the times, they generally experience internet through their mobile phones and not through their desktop. So what does it mean? It means that if you are a startup and you can understand how people are using their mobile phones, you can reach out to them in the language that they understand. Okay, that is the language in that they have the grip on, because most of them don't have access to desktop or computers, but they have access to mobile phones. Okay, and you could perhaps understand how to deliver the content to these people more in a mobile friendly way. Perhaps they could now start learning from these phones. They could use phones to understand the latest changes that are happening. I have seen lot of news platforms developing all these apps and all are example of this. Okay, so technological changes has helped a lot of startups to challenge the might of the incumbent organizations. Another change is political and regulatory changes. Government plays a very important role in enabling or curtailing a particular opportunity space. For example, payments. India demonetized a large portion of its currency. Okay. And that has enabled many young companies to offer solutions for digital payments. So if you look at the entire digital payment space, they existed a long time until the government made this change happen, but it has never breakthrough. So this government through its policies can actually make or break a venture. So you have to keep track of regulatory changes, and that could also give you ideas about where the new opportunities are likely to come. For example, like all those green e-vehicles, the battery operated vehicles coming up. So slowly the government is changing their policies regarding this thing. So you have to keep a track, all those regulatory policies and other things. Now the final source of opportunity is the social and demographic change. These changes are the significant antecedents to opportunities. And in a lot of countries, like we have young people. Japan is getting older, India is getting younger. A lot of people in India now live in a nuclear families, unlike in past that they were joint families. So what does it mean? It means that nuclear families will have both husband and wife working, and they'll have no time to cook their own food. So opportunities to restaurants, opportunities to food delivery platforms, and when they'll have child, they will not be able to get time to take care of the child. So then there is a opportunity in the form of domestic help or opportunities for creches, right, or childcare facilities. So all these have started to become extremely lucrative business ideas, because as a society we are moving towards from a joint family system to a nuclear family system, for example. So another thing that is happening in the demographic change is in terms of people getting older. So when you have youngsters in India working in other countries or say other cities, which means that back at home, you need to take care of their old parents. So those kids, they can't come back and stay with their parents and help them out. So maybe there are products and services that could address the needs of the elderly. Like NetMeds, for example, they deliver the medicines online. So now the old people need not step out of their house. The child or the person who is living away from them can order medicines from them and it get delivered. That medicine gets delivered, right? So all these things give you nice little spots, the tiny little spots that you need to identify. And people have already identified and they have started working on it. That's how these platforms have come up. So these are the good opportunities that you could start your venture in. So this is how you find those opportunities. So when you generate your ideas, you have to keep in mind all these things too, where you have to find those tiny little holes, the opportunities from where you can have those kind of ideas about what you want to do. Okay. Okay. Now you have, I'm assuming you guys have generated ideas. I have to cover this presentation. It's not a full syllabus. I have to cover this presentation today itself, and I want to give you maximum knowledge possible. So time lapse, time forward few days. And now I assume that you have generated a list of 50 ideas, out of which, considering all those, what you can do, what you cannot do, you have, say, at least 10 or 15 ideas with you. Now what to do with those ideas? I'll tell you, don't worry. Okay, this is a framework. I'll give you some simple frameworks that you can use to evaluate and filter these ideas. And after this framework, you can have 2 or 3 ideas that you can take forward. Okay, I can assure you. So now you have listed down a whole bunch of ideas. And now you need to see, do any of these excite you? Is there something that you can do? Is something that's even close to who you are? Like for you, instance, you like traveling and you have listed down many travel ideas. So you can, set them aside because they're very close to you. You cannot delete them down. You cannot strike them down. So using yourself, which, what you are and what you like to do, use this as the first tool to cut down the ideas. So out of 50, I assume that must be 20 to 30 things that that reflects what you are and what you like to do. So the next framework that you can use is this nice 2x2 matrix. On the row side of the matrix, we have market and personal. And on the column side, we have feasibility and value. So other thing that you need to do is there a technological feasibility? Is it overall possible? For instance, you may have come up with an idea to say that I would like to come up with a washing machine that also irons. At least I would like to have that kind of washing machine that will iron my clothes. But in as much as it sounds very interesting, but is it technologically feasible? Think that. Is it doable? Is it feasible? The other thing that you need to do is there a market feasibility related to the row, the column and the row? Do you think there are a lot of people who may want to have a product like this? I would love to have a washing machine that can also iron, but the market is likely to be large, but technologically it is not possible. Okay, so market feasibility, yes, but technological feasibility, is it doable? No, as of now. Maybe after 20 years, 30 years, maybe one of you engineering graduate will make some kind of a washing machine which will iron too, and I would love to buy that. If any one of you makes it, please contact me. So but technologically is not possible. So the third thing that you need to look into is at the value. While it is technologically feasible, assume, and there is a possibility for the market to be there, but is there a value? That means, is it worth doing it? Is there money in it? Is it financially feasible to do it? Okay, so this is what you have to ask when you are analyzing your idea in terms of market feasibility and market value. It will make money for sure, but then it's not technologically feasible, so it is not doable. So you can cross that idea. Okay, the idea of what I just told. And the fourth quadrant of the framework is personal and values. So here you'll have to ask this question: do I really want to do this? Because yes, it is technologically feasible, it is market feasible, you can do it, but do you really want to do it? Is your heart in it? Because there are a lot of things that we could do it. There are a lot of things that are market-wise possible and technology-wise possible, but your heart may not be into it. So use these 4 quadrants to come down and identify those bunch of ideas that you think are feasible, both from market and technology point of view, as well as your personal point of view, whether you will be able to do it and whether it holds any value for you. Okay, so this is how we are going to this is one part of idea validation, that you have to do it at your level. Let's now move to the next part of idea validation, that is customer validation. Okay, so this is an extremely interesting topic. Okay, as I see a lot of people around me, especially those who have tech enabling businesses, who will wait till the entire technology is built to kind of validate it. That's absolutely a wrong way to go about it. So how we start evaluating our idea is, we start with for example, I started with a simple social media page. Okay, we start with an Instagram page and got people to engage with us. Now, when we were sure of a kind of engagement we are getting, then we go ahead and create a simple landing page where we bought a ₹1,000 template online, converted into a small web page, landing page, website, just to test our hypothesis. Okay, I think this is how lean you should be. You don't need lakhs to start a business. You just need an idea and intent and action to do it. Okay, so you cannot afford to wait till your technology is built, or you cannot actually rely too heavily also on your tech team to be able to deliver, because remember, you're still validating for customers. Our idea is not yet validated. So there is absolutely no point in investing and putting in that kind of effort in the technology and the team to build the technology. So please remember that the customer validation stage, don't be in love with your idea. Just hate your idea, hate it. Be as critical as you can about it, and treat your customers like you would treat, for example, you treat your younger siblings, like, or like your like the students who, and like, analyze everything they tell you, analyze whatever they do, judge them, judge your ideas, figure out what they're saying, why they're saying, and then go ahead with it. So don't fall into the trap on investing a huge sum at this stage, because this is just an idea generation and validation stage. Go lean, go lean. Make use of other platforms. There are so many of them available. See what you can use to your advantage at this stage. Don't invest at this stage. Do not invest till your idea is validated. So customer validation, in my view, is a kind of three kinds, where each of us have different levels of risk and different level of possibilities. So this block diagram shows kind of customer discovery, validation from customer. Then we identify a scalable, repeatable sales model, and then we turn the hypothesis into facts. And then further it goes into execution, which is the further part of. So we stop here, where the line is drawn after that yellow circle. We stop at customer validation. We are not into an execution phase as of now. So we'll reiterate this cycle till the time our idea is validated, till the time all our ideas are validated, whatever you have zeroed on to those 10, 15 ideas. Okay. So the best method I feel for customer validation is when the customer is already willing to pay the price for your product or service. Okay. And has already paid it in advance. This is the best method which you can validate your idea. Suppose you want to, like, I want to sell toys, and I, through my Instagram page, when somebody approaches me, I tell, okay, I will customize the color, the character that you want. I'll make everything. But obviously, I'll take the payment in advance. And if the person is ready to pay, obviously, I start making only when they pay in advance. So when they pay me, and it itself validates my idea, okay, the customer is already willing to pay the price for my product and service, which he or she has not even received yet. So, okay, I'm going strong with it. Okay, so the next best method for validating the idea is when your customer has given you a promise or a letter of intent for building your product. And this is obviously much more riskier than the first option, but and they say they'll pay it later. So again, but this is another option through which you can rate your ideas. Okay, the third level, wherein the customer pain points are very big enough and they exactly match with the product or service that you have built, and hence there is a huge potential of earning money through it. Like if you have a laundry service at your hostel and your college, you realize washing clothes is a customer pain point, right? For your laundry man, for your washerman, you are the customer, and your biggest pain point is washing clothes. So, and actually this pain point is big enough that you are willing to, and he knows that you're willing to pay. Okay, so, and it exactly matches with the product, with the service that he is offering. So this is another way of validating your customer, wherein the customer pain points are big enough and which exactly matches your product and service. Okay, now these we have generated our ideas, and assume we have validated our ideas through all these tools. Let us now go to the next stage, which is evaluating our ideas. Evaluating and implementing. So on the screen, what you see are those three methods, the kind of methods. I'll dwell into each of them, which we use professionally. Now the things are getting serious, so all the fun talks are behind. Okay, so concentrate. I know it's a post-lunch session, but still, it would benefit you. Okay, first is the business plan, then it was later, actually this is a kind of evolutionary model, how things have become, and lean canvas, which is the final thing, is the thing which we use which at this your stage you can use to, even as a student you can use to implement and evaluate your ideas. Let's go about it. Okay, let me come to this. So one of the things, this is business plan is one of the things that people did in the past. Okay, after they got an idea, they have generated the idea, they have validated it. The first thing that they went about doing was to write a business plan. So what is business plan? It is a 25 to 30 page document which describe the people, the opportunity, risk, what are the rewards if somebody invests in this business plan. Like if I want to have a business, I'll write this huge document describing everything and I'll give it to my investor. Please invest in my business. It's so nice and so fancy and it will give you a lot of returns. So this 25-30 page document, entrepreneurs took about 4 to 6 months to come up with this comprehensive thing. So however, on closer observations, researchers found that business plans are not as important as we make it out to be. Okay, the fastest growing companies in the US, which were like less than 3 years old, so researchers thought if business plan are so important, then these five founders would have written a formal business plan. So they went about doing a survey, and in that survey, they found that approximately only 28% of the fastest growing companies in the US wrote a business plan. Okay, so around 60% did not write a business plan. So when they were asked how many of them strayed away from the original idea, obviously 65% of them moved away from the original idea. So this is the kind of I want to give you. It's just a huge document which we don't need to write as of now. First, if you need money from investor, then you will need to write a business plan. But that comes much later and not now. So it means that in this stage, which we are in right now, which is having an idea, evaluating and try to see if this idea makes sense and how to grow this idea, you don't need a business plan. Then why this slide is here? It was just to tell you that there something exists of this sort which you would need to make when you go further with your idea. So we'll keep this in mind, and now we'll find a easier way, a shortcut way to this. Okay, before that, I would like to introduce you to a lean startup methodology, how to go around it. So this was conceptualized and made popular by a person called Eric Ries through his book, The Lean Startup, the picture of which is depicted here. This methodology follows the 5 principles, which are: entrepreneurs are everywhere, entrepreneurship is management, entrepreneurship is validated learning, build, measure, learn, and innovation accounting. So this has become extremely popular method across the world in order to help the early stage entrepreneurs define their ideas and develop their ideas. So this was put together by this person, and its first principle says that entrepreneurs are everywhere. So what does it mean? It means you, me, anybody can become an entrepreneur. Okay. Entrepreneurship is management. What does it mean? It means that you can systematically work on your idea and develop it. So you just need some discipline from your end. It just needs that, some discipline. Validated learning, as I told you, you are taking decisions based on bunch of hypotheses. Then you are going out, testing whether these hypotheses are valid. If they are valid, you proceed. If they are not, you decide what you need to do in order to validate it, or change your hypothesis, or you complete your idea. So to do so, you have to get data from customers. The 4th principle, build, measure, learn. So once you start talking to customers, you will have a feeling of what is going to work. You need to put together your products, and the lean startup says it is not important to build everything or to put every bell and whistle. Start with something very small. Go out and see whether it works, learn from it, come back, add another feature. Okay? Perhaps you can talk to a bunch of people if you want to build a product, build a wireframe or a shell, go and say, does it look good? And you get a feedback from it. Then slowly start building a product, measuring them, and so many said so yes, so many said no. So, and then ask your customers, talk to them, what do you think I should do now? How can I improve this? Okay, so this is how you build, measure, and learn. Next is innovation accounting. So what you're trying to do is to account for all the innovations that you are trying to build into your business. So there are multiple measures out in the market that you could use to see whether your venture is growing or not, whether your innovation is making sense or not. So putting all these things together will get you the lean startup methodology. So this is we are going to follow, and when we follow this, we get something called the lean canvas model, which is right now on your screen. And there are a lot of small columns that you see here. I would like you to have a copy of this, which I'll circulate. I'll try to get it through your mentor, and I'll see how, that it reaches to all of you. So what are ideas that you have created, and you have finally come down to those 5 or 6 ideas after taking into account all that 2x2 matrix and that customer validation. So now I assume that you have 5 ideas with you. Now what you will do is, first let me tell you about this, okay? And then we will discuss how to fill it and what you have to do about it. So this is the kind of last phase of your coming up with an entrepreneurial idea and doing a venture out, making a venture out of it. Now, Alex Osterwalder and his colleagues developed a canvas, which is basically a 1-page canvas, and it has 9 different modules in it, which they say would define any venture's business model. It has become very successful. At the same time, there was another thought that it became extremely important, especially in early stage venturing space, which is called a lean startup. Startup which is very lean, no extra frills and fancy things, only what matters was there. So Eric Ries came up with this concept as to how you could start lean, and this model became very popular for people to develop and start up new ventures. So Ash Maurya, a third person, put this business model canvas, which is an extremely nifty tool to document your business ideas, and merged it with lean startup concept and came up with this tool called the lean canvas, which you can see right now. So lean canvas is what we will be using in this session. So lean canvas, as I mentioned, takes a lean startup phenomena and then combines with the business model canvas. So what is this lean startup phenomena, you will ask? So lean startup models start with the assumption that all businesses, when they are starting, they'll have 2 aspects to their venture idea. So first aspect is the customer and second aspect is the problem. So we are imagining a bunch of customers having set of problems, so that before you start a venture, it is just a hypothesis. You really don't know if it is true, but we imagine, given our experience and our understanding of the market, and given our ability, of course, that we would put these 2 together, customer and set of problems. Okay, so this is what we're going to sum up through this lean canvas. So, okay, now let me give you an example. Imagine you as thinking about setting up venture for home clinics. Okay, you are thinking of home clinic so that the old people need not go to the clinic. So the problem is that elderly have health issues. Getting onto a hospital or clinic is not easy, especially when you are in a large city with a lot of traffic jams and being alone. So therefore, let's imagine then this venture idea that we are going to take doctors home. So problem is that we are imagining is elderly having health issues, they can't go to hospital or find it very uncomfortable. Therefore, our solution is that we are going to send a doctor home. So what is our unfair advantage? We got a problem, we got a solution. The first block and the second block, we got those things, okay? Now let us come to, we have, what is the unfair, let us come to what is the unfair advantage there. So instead of customer relationship in lean canvas, we need to fill the unfair advantage. I'll come later. Unfair advantage will come to later to it. Let us come to the customer segments first. You know what is customer and what is consumer? Difference between, you understand the difference between consumer and customer? Consumer is person who is using your products and services, and customer is the person who is paying for it. So who is more important? The person obviously who is paying the person who is using is also important, and person who is paying is also important. So in this case, consumers can be elderly, the old people, and customers can be the children, their children who are living abroad, because they may feel guilty as the parents are left home. So they don't want their parents to have any discomfort of going to the hospital. So they want that doctor should come inside. So actually potential customers are children of those old people. So your customer, the person who's paying is customer. So here you will not write in customer segment, you will not write elderly. Okay, you will not write elderly, you will write those children of elderly people. of old people or caretakers of old people. So to begin with, how do we go about this? We may think of advertising on a television, so we may have to start advertising, and then what will be the revenue, the channels, how would you approach, what path, but like how will you approach your consumers and customers, how will you be visible to them? Okay, so we can have some pamphlets, door-to-door advertising, marketing. So these are all the things that you can use as channels to approach our customers. Okay, unique value proposition is a single clear company. It's like the tagline of your particular brand, sending healthcare home, that kind of thing. So we have seen problem, we have seen solution, unique value proposition, unfair advantage, we'll visit later. We know customer segments, we know the channels. Okay, now what is the cost structure? The bottom left column that you see, cost structure. In cost structure is that we need to pay the doctor, we also need to get the doctor to these houses, so the transport cost as well as doctor charges are going to be our cost structure. So you understand the value proposition here? We are bringing doctors home, making it very easy for the elderly to access healthcare. So what is the unfair advantage? Unfair advantage is what we do now is that just cannot be copied. So our unfair advantage can be that we are the first movers. We are the first in the industry to try something of this sort, bringing the doctors home for elderly. So here we can write, okay, we are the first movers. Nothing of this sort exists till now, and now we are doing it. So our unfair advantage is we are the first movers. Cost structure is doctors' charges and transport cost. These two we have to see. Now we could create a brand very quickly and start to advertise in a very clever manner so that children who are living abroad will sign into this program. So once we have a set of people who are signing into a service, we expect them to stay on, right? Now let us come to key metrics. What are key metrics? Key metrics is what we need to do to find out whether we are making money. That is before we bring in an accountant or we have that accounts department of our business. Okay, so we need to have certain thumb rules in order to see whether our startup is doing well or not. So the key metrics are those thumb rules. In our case, it could be number of people who are visiting our website. Okay, number of people who are signing up, very important. Number of people who are referring us to others, because the product or service is good and one person takes it who is living maybe in Jaipur, she may talk to her friends or their friends that here is a wonderful service. You can also use this product maybe in Agra or in Delhi. And so this key metrics will give you an idea of how your startup is doing. So our key metrics would be number of people signing up, number of people referring us to others, and number of people visiting our website just to check us out, okay, what we are all about. Okay, so doing this, if you put all this together, this could be our lean canvas. Revenue stream in this particular example are very simple. The payments coming through our web page, okay, or through our if you have a telebooking system, so coming through our telebooking, or some you can use existing payment facilities which are available. So revenue streams would be that. So this is a rough idea about a lean canvas. Okay, so now how would you write your lean canvas for your particular idea? So let me give you an example of a filled lean canvas. It is this is what I made for my venture. So before telling you the details of this, I'll just want you to know a few details that I expect you to interview around 30-35 people for your one idea. So if you have 5 ideas, 35 into 5 people. So here is what you should do. First, write your lean canvas with the information that you currently have. And then, as I told you how to fill your lean canvas, you should first fill it in the way, and you should be very critical when you are writing your first lean canvas. And then you revise it after a certain duration of time, revise it and see how your things have changed, how the things have changed from talking to the potential customers. Then list down a bunch of hypotheses for your venture, go out and talk to see which of these hypotheses you need to revisit and which you are completely falsified based on the information that you're receiving from your customers. Okay, and very important thing, don't try to do all the interviews over a span of a single day or 2 days. Please set aside some time every day, as I said, half an hour to 45 minutes, and identify how many interviews you're going to do in each day. Come back, document this, and next day again go forward. Okay. Carry on, if you can, carry on a recorder or something and listen carefully to the interviews, and you'll be really surprised how much you pick up from the interviews when you hear it repeatedly. So what I expect is you to fill one lean canvas for about 8 to 10 interviews that you do, and you keep revising your lean canvas with time, and then you'll come to something. So here's a small example of lean canvas that I made for my business. I have named my business as Crafty Curls, handmade with love. It's a small Instagram handle that I have. So problem which I identified were that parents need toys for the kids which are handmade, which are made in India, which can be customized, like their kid's name can be written on it, or they want a toy of their favorite characters, kids' favorite characters, no? All those, if they love Avengers, they want Avengers toys. If they love things that are actually not readily available in the market, if they want those rare, if the kids love some other characters, which Avengers are definitely readily available, but if some characters which are not readily available, and which are obviously eco-friendly, made of organic cotton yarn, no use of plastic or less use of plastic, that kind of thing. So what I came up with a solution of handmade crocheted toys, which I further, what my vision is to tie up with a NGO, and which has rural women, and which will be made by those underprivileged rural women of India, so that I am able to lift them up to the some standards, and they will have their earning as well. The solution would be custom. For each problem, I have a solution. Handmade, made in India, made by underprivileged rural women of India. Can be customized, customizable characters, color, what color they want, what size they want, small, medium, large, whatever. Eco-friendly, made of organic cotton yarn, and no use of plastic. And now let's come to customer segments. Who are my users? Kids aged 0 to 5 years. And who are my customers? Parents of infants and toddlers and relatives of those kids. Okay, they are my customers who will pay for my service, who will pay for my products. Now, what is my unique value proposition? My unique value proposition is a single tagline for my business: age appropriate, customized, and eco-friendly crocheted toys for kids, which are handmade with love. Okay, what is the kind of unfair advantage that I have? I have an exquisite workmanship. The workmanship could be beyond exemplary. Wide range of toys will be there, and value addition I will do through customization. Okay, what are the channels I would be using to approach my customers? I have a landing page, a website, and I'll use my Instagram and Facebook handles. And in due course of time, I'll do some exhibitions and displays. I'll put a stall in some at some festivals or something where I could sell. Okay. Now, what would be my cost structure? What will be in what all things I will have to invest? First is pattern for those toys. I would need some pattern to follow, through which I'll make. Raw material would be used, yarn, the accessories. For the filling inside the toys, I would have to give salaries to the employees. I have to pack and ship, so packaging and shipping costs will be involved. There will be a lot of marketing, advertisements, and collaborations that I have to do. And exhibition. If I'm buying a stall, if I'm renting a stall, I would need to pay something. So all these will be the cost structure. And what will be my revenue stream? There will be two revenue streams: one online mode, one offline mode. One is online through website and social media handles, and another revenue stream I would get through exhibitions and displays by selling it through them. So this is the way you fill your lean canvas, and I would like you to fill your lean canvas for your ideas, whatever, at least 3 to 4 ideas, and revise them and further dwell upon them. See what you can do. Okay, so now we have processed, we have generated our ideas, we have validated it, we have evaluated it, and we have implemented it. Hypothetically, we have done everything. So now, then the question is coming to us is, and while doing all this, we have this question in our mind whether it will be successful or not. So let me introduce you to this concept called effectuation. So before we start on a venture, the big question that we have is, how do we know before we start whether we would be successful or not? Even before that, how do we know whether we should take that entrepreneurial plunge or leap or not? While these two questions have some correlation with each other, it is very difficult for us to tell that how things are going to pan out. So where can we get our answers from? So one of the approach that is used to get answers for all these questions is the effectual approach. The focus in this approach, the focus is on using a set of evolving means to achieve new and different goals. So effectuation evokes creative and transforming tactics. Effectual logic is the name given to heuristics used by expert entrepreneurs in new venture creation. So they actually use these elements which form a effectual cycle as the venture develops, and wherein we have means, you have goals. Now affordable laws, surprise, all these are the principles which I'll dwell upon more, but this is the kind of rough means that I want to give you, a rough picture, that the means will lead to goals, interaction, commitments, you will have new means and new goals, so you will keep repeating the cycle until you have a new product in line and markets and firms. So this is a kind of effectuation cycle that you will have to repeat, and to answer your question whether it will be successful or not and what all you have to, there are a few principles of this effectual approach that will guide you. These principles are, first is bird in hand principle, that is start with your means. Okay, bird in hand is better than, one bird in hand is better than two in the bush, right? You must have all heard it. So don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Start taking action based on what you have readily available, who you are, what you know, and who you know, as I said earlier. Second principle is affordable loss principle. Set affordable loss. Okay, evaluate the opportunities based on whether the downside is acceptable to you. If you're investing 2 lakhs in your business, and they are out of your saving, 1 lakh is out of your savings, and 1 lakh you have asked from your relatives and friends, so you can afford to lose at least your savings, but not the things that you have gathered from your family and friends. So set up an affordable loss threshold. What is acceptable to you, what kind of this thing is acceptable to you, rather than focusing on the attractiveness of the predicted upside. Okay, I'll achieve this, I'll make crores and crores of money. Have that in mind, that you have to evaluate opportunities based on whether the downside is acceptable to you or not. Okay. Third is the lemonade principle. Leverage your contingencies. If life give you lemons, make lemonade out of it. Embrace surprises that arise from uncertain situation. Learn from them. Remain flexible rather than tethered to existing goals. If you are planning to do A thing, but suddenly a C thing pops up, you should be able to embrace it, adapt to it, and do a certain B thing, which is totally different from your initial what you have thought about. Okay. The last principle, the fourth principle is crazy quilt principle. Form partnerships. Crazy quilt is getting bits and pieces from everywhere and forming a big, beautiful thing. So form partnerships with people and organizations willing to make real commitment to jointly create the future product, farm, or market with you. Don't worry so much about the competitive analysis and strategic planning. There are different game plan together. Here we are talking about starting your venture. Okay. The last principle is pilot in the plane. Do not predict. Okay. It is human tendency to predict events around us and try to gain from that prediction. We tend to think so much about the future. We also tend to control events, or we tend to people to behave in a way that is predictable and orderly. You never know how people will behave. So, but this ends up being counterproductive and damaging to both the individual and the venture. So do not be focused on prediction and control only what is doable. Be the pilot of your own plane, and so that you know what you can control, and think there are things beyond your control, just leave them. Okay. So these principles will give you a view as to what and answer all those questions that you have in your mind. Actually, this will actually guide you while you are starting up with your venture. So expert entrepreneurs believe that future is, shaped by people. They believe that if they can make the future happen, they don't need not worry about predicting the future, determining the perfect timing to start, or finding the optimal opportunity. So, okay. So effectual logic sits opposed to the casual logic, which is taught to managers in a more certain or predictable kind of circumstances. So that's all about entrepreneurship that I had to discuss with you all for this session. And I hope it had helped you guys, and it will help you to come up with a model. At least if you can, the minimum you can do is write some ideas, validate them, customer validation and that matrix validation, and fill up a lean canvas for your each business idea. So if you guys can do this much, I would consider this webinar to be a success. So, and if you, regarding the, okay, this, I'm done now. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. So that's what is all summed up here. Get started, get going, if you guys are interested. Okay, so that's all I had to say. And I'm done. Now, if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and ask. I would love to answer your questions. Go ahead and ask.
So any student want to ask the question, they can write in the chat box. We have 2 or 3 minutes for the question answer session. So you can write the question in the chat box.
Okay, I'm not able to see the chat box, so
Well, I will forward you. If
yeah.
any question
Please,
comes to the chat box.
please. Yeah, please just let me know
Yes,
if there is any question. Also, there are 2 files which I would like to share: the Lean Canvas model and how to fill Lean Canvas PDF thing.
You can try with the same procedure as you shared.
Yeah, I'm trying. Actually, I uploaded those files, but right now I'm not. My screen has got a bit. I'm not able to share it. Maybe can I mail it to you guys? Means I don't know how will you circulate it to your students if anyone is interested.
Yes, ma'am. You can mail me. I will share with the student. There is no
okay, I'll do that. That will be a better thing. I'll share a Lean Canvas this thing, and how to fill. There's a document, PDF document on how to fill Lean Canvas. In case somebody where I missed few points or if I was not clear, so they can refer to that document and fill in their Lean Canvases.
Sure.
If they are interested. So I'll just forward those 2 documents to you. And also I would love to hear back from the students on Menti if they can submit their feedbacks. And it will help me to improve from my next session onwards.
Yes,
so
ma'am, we are taking the feedback. If you you will provide any link in the chat box, then definitely students will go through the feedback link. On behalf of the IIC, I am also taking the feedback from the student. The link is available in the chat box. There is no issue.
Okay, right.
So, ma'am, there is no any question in the chat box.
Oh my God, this is really. I was so clear that there are no questions, but I'm really happy to be part of it. It was a great. It was good experience interacting with you all. Otherwise, students can contact me on my email also if they have any questions regarding this. They can contact.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am, for this enlightening session. You well explained the importance of entrepreneurship. I assure you that this session will be really helpful for the student and all the participants, especially that are working in the field of entrepreneurship, and they will search their path in the field of entrepreneurship also. So, thanks again for giving us valuable time for this impact lecture. Also,
thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Also, very special thanks to all precious student and faculty participants to make this lecture meaningful. Thanks to all. Have a nice day. Good day ahead. Thank you again. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.